There are cities that live and breathe through their stories. London is one of them. Every street corner, every ancient cobblestone alley holds secrets, tragedies, and lives forgotten in the city's characteristic gray mist. Our story today begins on one of this city's most vibrant stages, Covent Garden, but it ends in one of the darkest corners of the human soul. This is the story of an artist who turned his art into his life, and of a perpetrator who turned death into a work of art. Covent Garden, the night of November 5th, 2018. Bonfire night. The London sky is ablaze with magnificent fireworks, and the air is filled with laughter, music, and the smell of roasted chestnuts. Amidst this joyous chaos, there is an island of tranquility, a pocket of stillness. It is the stage of the Gilded Gentleman. His real name was Leo Vance. For 5 years, he had been an indispensable part of Covent Garden. Every day, he would spend 2 hours meticulously covering himself in bronze gold paint, donning a Victorian-era costume, and transforming himself into a living statue. He didn't move, didn't speak a word. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on a distant point, a sad and ethereal beauty emanating from his very stillness. Tourists and Londoners adored him. They left coins and notes in his old open violin case, not just for his skill, but for the almost religious dedication he brought to his craft. But tonight, something was different. A small handwritten sign was placed beside the violin case. Thank you for everything. This is the final performance. No one knew why. Perhaps he had found a better job. Perhaps he was simply tired. The crowd felt a pang of regret. As night fell and the last fireworks faded, Leo moved. He slowly lowered his arms and gave the crowd a graceful bow. Applause erupted. He smiled, a rare and somewhat weary smile, as he collected his sign, his violin case, and his few small props. As was his habit, he walked into a narrow, dark alley nearby, the same one the artists always used to change their costumes and rest. The crowd slowly dispersed, each person returning to their own life, carrying with them the final image of the Gilded Gentleman. They believed he was doing the same, returning to his. But they were wrong. Leo Vance walked into that alley, but he never walked out. His disappearance was at first just a whisper among the other performers the next day. Have you seen Leo? Suppose he's really gone then. But as the sun climbed higher and his familiar spot remained empty, a sense of unease began to spread. That unease turned to horror the following morning when a sanitation worker entered the alley to clear the rubbish. His scream echoed in the quiet morning air. Leo Vance hadn't vanished. He had been there the whole time. His body, still in its shimmering gold costume, was seated upright on an old wooden chair someone had left behind. His hands were placed on his thighs, his back straight, his head held high. His eyes were wide open, staring into the void. He looked exactly as he did when he was performing, a perfect statue. Except this time, his stillness was eternal. Detective Chief Inspector Alistair Finch of Scotland Yard was a man who had seen too much cruelty in his 30-year career. But this crime scene still gave him pause. It lacked the grisly chaos of a typical murder. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, only a chilling, profound silence. "It's like a theater," the young constable accompanying him whispered. "No," Finch replied, his voice low. "Theater is for the living. This is a gallery." The initial autopsy revealed that Leo Vance had died of asphyxiation. The killer had strangled him from behind, quickly and efficiently, and then had taken the time to pose the body. This act required a calm demeanor and a clear purpose. This was not a robbery gone wrong or a random street fight. This was an execution, a ritualistic one. Leo's wallet was still in his pocket, containing 40 pounds. 7 pounds and some change. The violin case with the tips from his final performance was gone, but that hardly seemed like the primary motive. The posing of the body was the message. But what was it meant to say? A sick tribute or a cruel mockery? DC Finch began his investigation with what he had: a seemingly harmless victim and a crime scene that was far too perfect. He believed that to understand Leo's death, he first had to understand his life. But Leo Vance, much like the statue he portrayed, was an intensely private person. He had no family, no close friends, no social media presence. He had only his art, and the secrets that were carefully hidden beneath the bronze. The investigation began with those in Leo's immediate circle, the community of street performers. Professional jealousy quickly emerged as a potential motive. Attention fell on a magician who went by the stage name Mystico the Magnificent. His real name was Gary Skinner. Mystico's performance style was flamboyant and loud, a stark contrast to Leo's quiet dignity. He and Leo often competed for the best performance pitches in Covent Garden. When questioned, Mystico didn't hide his resentment. In the interview room, Mystico, a middle-aged man with dyed hair and a flashy stage costume, sat with his arms crossed. "Look, detective," he said, "I didn't like the guy, all right? He acted like he was high art, and the rest of us were just clowns for hire. But kill him? For what? A few extra feet of pavement? Don't be daft." "Where were you on Monday night, between 10 p.m. and midnight, Mr. Skinner?" Finch asked. "At the Lamb and Flag pub, same as always, having a few pints to forget a bad day's work." But Mystico's alibi was weak. The bartender vaguely remembered seeing him, but the pub was packed on bonfire night. No one could be certain he was there the entire time the murder took place. The press seized the story. Rival magician questioned in Gilded Gentleman murder. Mystico became the perfect suspect in the public's eye. But DC Finch wasn't convinced. It all felt too easy. While his team continued to dig into Mystico's life, Finch returned to Leo's small flat in Camden. He had a feeling he'd missed something. This time, he wasn't looking for evidence. He was looking for anomalies. And he found one. Under a loose floorboard, there was an old wooden box, secured with a rusted lock. After a locksmith opened the box, its contents were revealed to be not money or jewels, but another life. Yellowed letters, a few black and white photographs, and a birth certificate. The name on the certificate was not Leo Vance. It was Edward Croft. Mother, Eleanor Croft. Father, unnamed. But on the back of one old photograph was a handwritten inscription: Thorn Manor, summer 1989. Leo Vance's secret was beginning to unravel. He was not an anonymous artist. He was an unanswered question, a thorn that could pierce the side of a wealthy dynasty. The case had just taken a new and far more dangerous turn. When a case involves the rich and powerful, truth becomes a commodity. DC Finch quickly found himself entering a labyrinth where every opened door led only to another corridor of lies and contradictions. The first to enter that labyrinth was Jacob, a man in his 60s, his face etched with bitterness. He was the former personal driver for the real estate magnate Marcus Thorne, the owner of the manor in the old photograph. In the interview room, Jacob sat ramrod straight, his hands clenched. "He fired me for no good reason after 20 years of service," he said. "The man is a devil in a base coat suit, Inspector. I'm here because I want justice for that boy." "What do you know, Mr. Jacob?" Finch asked. "About a week ago, I was near Covent Garden. I saw him, Thorne. He was screaming in the face of a young lad. That lad was the artist who died. I heard him clear as day. Thorne said, 'If you ever come near my family again, I will destroy you.' Now the boy is dead. You connect the dots." Jacob's testimony was a bombshell. It provided both a motive and a direct threat from a man with the means to carry it out. But Finch was skeptical. Jacob held a personal grudge against Thorne. His testimony could be the truth, or it could be an arrow poisoned with revenge. While verifying Jacob's story, Mystico was brought in for a second interview. This time, he was more cooperative, perhaps feeling the pressure from the press. He seemed less arrogant. "Look," Mystico said, "I've been thinking. There was something odd. About a week ago, after his set, I saw Leo get into a very expensive black Bentley. I know Thorne's car. He drives a silver Rolls-Royce. This Bentley was different. Leo didn't look happy about it. He looked like he was on his way to a sentencing. Anxious, kept looking around." This testimony threw everything into disarray. It contradicted Jacob's story. If Leo was involved with a mysterious person in a Bentley, then perhaps Marcus Thorne wasn't the only one with a problem with him. The case now had an unidentified ghost. And finally, Finch confronted the most important link. Clara Thorne, Marcus's only daughter, a philanthropist and a darling of London society. She was invited to the station. The interview room seemed to shrink in Clara's presence. She sat opposite Finch, her back perfectly straight, her hands resting lightly on her Hermes handbag. She didn't fidget. Her gaze, clear and without a ripple, looked straight at Finch as if he were a piece of uninteresting furniture. "Miss Thorne," Finch began, "do you know a man named Leo Vance?" A barely perceptible frown creased her brow. "The name is vaguely familiar. Ah, the artist in Covent Garden. I may have passed by him a few times." "Just passed by? We have reason to believe your relationship was more involved." Clara sighed, a sigh of impatience rather than sorrow. "Inspector, I patronize many of the arts. Occasionally, I see a street performer of talent, and I give them a small sum of money as encouragement, a personal charity, if you will. Mr. Vance was one of them. That is all. My father would not be pleased to know I associate with people of that sort, so I kept it quiet. Is there a problem?" Her words were as cold as ice. People of that sort? Finch looked at the beautiful young woman before him and felt a chill run down his spine. She was lying. He was certain of it. But her lie was too perfect, too imperious, almost impossible to break. Finch now had 3 witnesses: a vengeful man with a perfect story, a rival with a confusing detail, and an heiress with a cold denial. He was no longer investigating a murder. He was standing in the middle of a stage where 3 actors were performing 3 different plays. And he knew a single director was pulling all their strings from the shadows. A murder investigation is not a straight line. It is a battle against chaos, against lies. DCI Finch felt he was losing this battle. Leads led to dead ends. The black Bentley Mystico mentioned seemed to be a phantom. Marcus Thorne's alibi, while not airtight, was difficult to dismantle. Finch decided to change tactics. Instead of investigating the victim, he began to investigate the witnesses. His team discovered an interesting fact. Jacob, the driver, had received an anonymous deposit of $5,000 into his bank account just 2 days after he came to the police. When confronted, Jacob panicked and claimed it was from a lucky bet. The blatant lie rendered his testimony worthless, but it raised a bigger question. Who had paid him? Meanwhile, the investigation into Leo's background finally yielded a result. By cross-referencing old records and a discreet DNA test from a hair sample of Marcus Thorne that police had obtained, they had their answer. An answer that shook the entire case. Marcus Thorne was Leo Vance's biological father. Leo's mother, the maid Eleanor Croft, had been dismissed after becoming pregnant to cover up the scandal. This truth was like a torch in the labyrinth. Suddenly, things became clearer. Marcus Thorne's motive was no longer just anger. It was the abject fear of a scandal that could destroy his dynasty. Clara's denial was no longer aloofness. It was a bald-faced lie to conceal a blood tie. But just when Finch thought he had found his director, a report from the digital forensics team turned everything upside down once again. They had recovered permanently deleted emails from Clara Thorne's laptop. These emails showed that 6 months before the murder, Clara had hired one of London's best private investigators. Her request was specific. Find and provide all information on one Edward Croft, son of Eleanor Croft. The investigator's final report had been sent to Clara just 2 weeks before Leo was killed. It contained everything: Leo's identity, his life, his habits, and, presumably, his intentions. DC Finch leaned back in his chair. He had been wrong. Clara wasn't an actor in this play. She was the director. The final confrontation took place in the same interview room, but this time the atmosphere had changed. This was no longer an interview, it was a reckoning. Finch placed a thick file on the table between himself and Clara. "Let's talk again, Miss Thorne," he said, "but this time we won't be talking about charity." Clara maintained her composure. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do. You hired a private investigator. You knew Leo Vance, or rather Edward Croft, was your half-brother. You knew he was preparing to reveal his identity." Clara was silent. For the first time, a crack appeared in her perfect facade. Finch continued, his voice steady, but each word landing like a hammer blow. "You were the only one who knew all the players. You knew Jacob hated your father. Was $5,000 the price for him to tell a convenient story? A story that pointed suspicion at your father?" Clara's silence grew heavier. "You also knew Mystico," Finch went on, "a gossip who notices everything. So you met your brother, but you didn't take your own car. You used a friend's Bentley, a distinctive, memorable car. You created a ghost, a non-existent suspect, to confuse the investigation, didn't you?" As Finch spoke, the horrifying picture of Leo's final days came into focus. Clara hadn't approached Leo as an enemy. She came as a savior. She played the part of a sister shocked by the truth, an ally who wanted to help her brother claim his rightful place. She earned Leo's trust. She promised she would stand with him when he confronted their father. Leo's final performance was not an ending, but a beginning. He believed he was finally about to get a family. You arranged to meet him after his show. In that alley, Finch concluded, he came full of hope. He trusted you, and you strangled him from behind, your own brother. Then you sat him on that chair. Why, Clara? Why pose the body? Was that the final mockery? To turn him into the very thing he strove to be? A work of art that everyone looks at, but no one truly sees. The silence was broken. Clara laughed, a dry, horrifying sound. "Sees?" she said. "You think anyone truly saw him? He was a street clown, a stain my father created. It was not going to tarnish my life, my inheritance, my future. I didn't kill my brother, Inspector. I erased a mistake." The confession finally came, not with tears or remorse, but with a bone-chilling arrogance. The monster was revealed. Clara Thorne was arrested. The Gilded Gentleman case concluded with a shockwave that rocked London's high society and the entire nation. The narrative she had so carefully woven, a tale of forbidden love and a father's greed, was in fact the story of her own monstrous cruelty. The trial exposed a criminal mind of terrifying detail and precision. She had manipulated everyone, using their own greed, hatred, and even their better qualities, like trust, against them. She was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Marcus Thorne, the powerful man, was broken. He was cleared of murder, but condemned by the truth. He had lost the son he never acknowledged and the daughter he had raised to a crime of her own making. The Thorne dynasty he had fought to protect was left in ruins. The story of Leo Vance, or Edward Croft, is a tragedy of silence. He lived his life in silence, and he died in silence. His art, that golden stillness, was a wordless scream for recognition, for a place in a world that had rejected him from birth. He died at the hands of the only family he had ever found, killed by the very blood he so desperately wished to join. Months after the trial, a new young artist took over Leo's spot in Covent Garden. Life went on. But sometimes, those who walk past that little alley still feel a strange chill. They say it's as if the image of a golden statue sitting on a chair is still there, a permanent reminder that the most terrifying masks are not made of gold for a performance, but are the ones worn to hide an empty soul. The gold paint may glitter, but eventually time and truth will wear it away, revealing what truly lies beneath.